Greetings, this is Jeff Riddle from Christ Reformed Baptist Church in Louisa, Virginia, and this is going to be an audio version of a book review that I have written. The book under review was written by Joel Beeke. It's titled Striving Against Satan, subtitled Knowing the Enemy, His Weakness, His Strategy, His Defeat. It was published by Brentirion Press, and the copy I have did not have a date for its publication. It is 126 pages in length. This book under review, my review of it, first appeared in the Evangelical Forum newsletter, volume 5, number 3, in 2008, and it appeared there on pages 57 and 58. Here now is the review. Joel Beeke is a prolific pastor, scholar, publisher, and Puritanophile. This short work, adapted from a series of addresses Beeke gave at the Metropolitan Tabernacle School of Theology in London in July 2004, is a practical effort to address the reality of Satan and spiritual warfare from a balanced biblical perspective. On one hand, Beeke desires to avoid the extremes of the charismatic movement and the sensationalism of attention to demonic warfare. On the other hand, he wants to avoid the errors of liberals who deny the existence of Satan and his hosts. For Beeke, quote, "Today is an opportune time for word-centered evangelicals to promote a biblically balanced view of Satan and demons that avoids both denial and obsession," end quote, page 31. The book has 4 parts. In part 1, Knowing the Enemy, Beeke presents an overview of the biblical and historical teaching on Satan. He acknowledges that every believer is engaged in spiritual warfare. Beeke denies the teaching of some charismatics that a believer can be demon-possessed, see page 23, and rebukes the error of what he calls unhealthy interest in devils that mitigates personal responsibility, see page 31. Nevertheless, he affirms that, quote, "When God becomes real to a believer, Satan also becomes real," end quote, page 34. In part 2, Knowing Satan's Weaknesses, Beeke draws on Ralph Erskine's strategies for fighting Satan, including strategic retreat or running for shelter to Christ, an unyielding defense, and an attacking offense. He traces the weapons of defense and offense in an exposition of the whole armor of God in Ephesians 6. In part 3, Knowing His Strategies, the author, quote, brings together the cream of what 6 Puritan authors, Thomas Brooks, Richard Gilpin, William Spurstow, John Downame, William Gurnall, and Thomas Goodwin taught about Satan's devices and their remedies, end quote, in their particular works on this topic. See page 65. This section is filled with practical counsel. For example, in discussing Satan's strategies of enticing to sin by the device of offering the bait of pleasure to hide the hook of sin, Beeke expands on 5 remedies. Remedy 1, remember the consequences of yielding to temptation. Remedy 2, don't toe dangle, that is, stay away from situations where temptation occurs. Remedy 3, stay actively involved in growth and ministry. Remedy 4, share sustained temptations with a close, confidential Christian friend. Remedy 5, remember that you cannot remain neutral to any temptation. See pages 73 and 74. In part 4, Knowing Satan's Defeat, a concluding challenge is offered for believers to engage in spiritual victory in the 3 spheres of our personal lives, churches, and nation. Beeke calls for the cultivation of personal holiness among believers. This does not mean withdrawal from the world like monks or the Amish, but fighting in the world. Nor does it mean, quote, sanctifying everything in the world for Christ, end quote, since, quote, sinful activities can never be sanctified, end quote, page 93. In the church, we need reformation and revival. Reformation without revival, quote, will remain cold and formal and can even be destructive, end quote, page 108. On the other hand, revival without reformation, quote, promotes heat without light, zeal without soundness, end quote, page 110. In the nation, Christians are to pursue prayer and evangelism. Quote, one-on-one evangelism, not national politics, can save our backslidden countries, end quote, page 118. Beeke's book offers a balanced treatment of an often neglected subject among conservative, Bible-believing Christians. It is filled with much practical advice and counsel to spur one toward battling Satan, mortifying sin, and growing in holiness. This book would be an ideal short study for a Bible study or discipleship group. One other benefit, Beeke has liberally sprinkled the text with many powerful and helpful quotations from Reformation and Puritan heroes that are worthy of collecting, considering, and utilizing in ministry. Here ends the review. You can receive audio book reviews and notes like this one, Word Magazine podcasts, and sermons by subscribing to the Christ Reformed Baptist Church sermon audio feed on iTunes by searching for Christ Reformed Baptist Church. For video material, you can subscribe to the Word Magazine channel on youtube.com. You can also find written book reviews, notes, and articles on my blog, jeffriddle.net.